disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing that happened. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. Unfortunately, we have to share some saddening news to report. A true American patriot, blogger, investigative journalist, YouTuber, and really just a incredible character to witness and have him cover all these horrific events happening in Ukraine and Russia, has unfortunately passed. He died in Ukrainian custody in prison due to his reporting on the Ukrainian situation. He has covered a lot of information that has benefited of loss, has gotten, such great admiration by the American public to bring us context about this war. And unfortunately, because of what he was reporting and how there's such a stronghold on preserving the narrative, the war narrative of Ukraine and Russia, he was captured and he was sent to prison and he died in prison custody. So this is reported out from the Daily Telegraph in New Zealand, saying US journalist Gonzalo Lira, jailed and tortured by Ukraine, has died, the family is reporting. And it goes on by saying Chilean-American blogger Gonzalo Lira has died in a Ukrainian prison, his family said on Friday. Lira, 55 at the time of his death, lived in Kharkov and blogged as Coach Red Pill, but switched to the YouTube commentary after the conflict with Russia escalated in February of 2022. He was arrested by the Security Service of Ukraine last May and accused of discrediting the Ukrainian leadership and the military. I cannot accept the way my son has died. He was tortured, executed, and incognito for 8 months and 11 days, and the U.S. Embassy did nothing to help my son. The responsibility of this tragedy is on dictator Zelensky, with concerns of a senile American president, Joe Biden. His father, Gonzalo Lira Sr., wrote in note published by The Gray Zone. Lira Sr. also reached out to ex-host Tucker Carlson, confirming his death of his son in Ukrainian custody. He has since spoken to Carlson about his death in the case early December. So it has been reported that during his custody, he has suffered pneumonia. He has had a lot of medical problems while in containment. And again, as the father's reaching out, as people are noting that, the United States didn't do anything to help this person, as they're saying that they care so much about protecting journalists and free speech. Joe Biden made that empathetic remark about how we need to go around and, get back our journalists that are detained by other countries, but they don't mention Gonzalo Lira, they don't mention Julian Assange, they don't mention certain individuals, because they want to preserve certain individuals that are preserving the war narrative, preserving the, complexity of the military-industrial complex. They don't want people to be investigators. They don't want people to actually report facts. They just want people to push their propaganda. And considering their propagandists are also in jailed, they're going out to rescue that one journalist, I forget the name now, and detained in Russia, but they're not reaching out to protect Gonzalo Lira for obvious reasons. Such a tragic loss at 55. So I want to just show, this is one of his last posts before his arrest the second time, because he was arrested before and they, released him out of prison on a temporary temporary release. But then they arrested him again, and that's unfortunately when the incident happened that he unfortunately died. And here's exactly why the United States ignored the pleas of this journalist and why Ukraine jailed this person. Why exactly Gonzalo Lira, an American blogger, was such a threat to their establishment, and why they were so, baselined on detaining this person. So take a look at this.
The start of the genesis of this whole situation is because I had an opinion that went against the narrative. And that's why I went to prison. And that's why, if I'm arrested again, I will die in prison. So I ask you, please, as many people as possible. The American State Department knows exactly who I am and the situation I'm currently involved in. And they know the fate that awaits me. They know it. You know, they have that saying that, I forget the wording exactly. You know, I'm a little stressed out, as you can imagine. But they have that saying that people are fundamentally good, but for evil to triumph, all you need is the indifference of good people. Please don't be indifferent to my fate. I ask you this very humbly. Please recognize that, well, the literal death that awaits me if this doesn't work out. Understand what's going on.
So that was the last moment. And the devastating part about it is this is not a hyperbole. This is not him being melodramatic. This is not him, emphasizing to get, clickability on his postings. This is him actually bringing a dark, disturbing warning that, now that it's been confirmed that he is dead, that they did, imprison him to the point of his eventual no longer living. This is a bleak warning to any journalist. This is a bleak warning, the same as what's happening with Julian Assange, the same that's happening with so many journalists around the world, that, what we do on a daily basis, even to the point of what I'm doing right now, as being a simple podcaster, a simple Canadian in his basement doing a shoestring podcast like this, it's not just dealing with the hurdles of censorship. It's not just dealing with, YouTube and Google and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter deplatforming you. But depending how far this goes, depending how far you reach into um, the establishment and, doing the investigative reporting, it could cost your livelihood. It could cost your ability to exist on this planet because of how corrupted, how evil, how maniacal, and how devious the establishment is. And considering the fact that they want to escalate the tension so far to the point of a nuclear arsenal war between the United States, NATO-aligned countries with Ukraine, and going against Russia to the point of involving nuclear arsenal that could potentially wipe out the face of the earth, that is devastating. And it goes to show how far they are willing to reach to preserve that narrative, even if it involves killing their own citizens who are doing the due diligence of being an investigative reporter to provide context of this war, because we were not being told about this war. We were not being told the exact truth. We weren't told the history that led up to Russia invading Ukraine. We were not told exactly why there was tensions in the first place, and we were not told the story of the Azov Battalion, which is the neo-Nazi faction that's taken over the establishment of Ukraine, that's allowing this war to continue. We have not been told any of this, but we have people like Gonzalo Lira who is doing the due diligence of providing that information, providing that context, because the more we know about this war, the further along we could actually do to prevent further casualties. That is the point of this. And during war times, the most evil, maniacal people are the ones that are doing the most mass censorship. They hated people like him. They hated people to provide context and information because they want to continue and propel this war as far as it can go. And it got to a point where even Ukrainian forces were on television here speaking about Gonzalo Lira. And this is a predominant Ukrainian trans woman that is announcing on state television there that we need to go after Gonzalo Lira. They're personally targeting this journalist for the simple act of journalism, because he is not doing the propaganda stunt that the U.S. state is providing for Ukraine. They're not doing the due diligence of NATO. They're actually providing information for the general public, and they can't stand that. They can't stand that, which is why they did everything in their power to capture this person, to capture Gonzalo Lira, and detain him for the simple act of journalism. We have seen this all throughout, time, folks. We just covered about David Menzies just a short while ago about how he was falsely arrested because, again, they can't just arrest you for being a journalist, but they can try to trump you up on charges on ridiculous claims to tackle you down and silence you out. So here's Ukraine's response to Gonzalo Lira, and listen to how they personally put a vendetta on this journalist for providing context, providing information to the general public.
Gonzalo Lira made the mistake of admitting that he thought about running away to the so-called Donetsk People's Republic or Luhansk People's Republic, as well as running towards Russia. Gonzalo Lira also claims he wants political asylum. An innocent man would stand and face trial. Gonzalo Lira is not an innocent man. Gonzalo Lira is a criminal propagandist. Gonzalo Lira is not a journalist. But most importantly, after his admissions to having a desire to run towards Russia, to run towards the so-called Donetsk People's Republic and so-called Luhansk People's Republic, he then went west. But there's a reason you haven't heard from Gonzalo Lira yet with his so-called attempts at asylum in Hungary. It's because the state security services, better known as the SBU, are some of the most talented and focused law enforcement agents across the globe. And in doing so, they knew where Gonzalo Lira was, most certainly, every step of the way with his movements over the past 48 hours.
So this was a journalist who knew he was going to get imprisonment and knew that this was not just a jail sentence. This was the death penalty. He knew the dark warning. He knew that his life was at stake and tried to flee at whichever direction to get away from the totalitarian regime, the dictatorship of Zelensky pouncing on this journalist that the United States is ignoring, that the West is ignoring. He knew this. He knew this. We saw in the previous video. He knew that this was going to happen. And yet the United States government, the State Department, the Foreign Affairs Council, all people across the West, all NATO-aligned countries that were in support of Ukraine, that preach at the top of their lungs that they support journalism, they support free press, and we got to do everything to help the captured people, the fellow citizens across the world that are captured wrongfully. They did not do anything for Gonzalo Lira. Gonzalo Lira was trying to flee. No one reached out. No one did anything in support of him. And they captured him. They captured him, detained him, and he died. Because when push comes to shove, lives do not matter. The narrative is more defensible, is more in preservation than anyone's life. They rather keep the war narrative afloat. They will do everything to defend the war narrative, even if it includes killing their own. That is how devastating it is, ladies and gentlemen. And this is the dark warning that pretty much plagues upon any journalist, any blogger, any YouTuber, anyone that's willing to really take at the noticeable flaws of the establishment, anyone that's willing to step up and fight for the goodness of people, for the goodness of the populace. Anyone that's willing to do that, they are met with a harsh target on their back. And you don't know how far this is going to go. You don't know how far that warnings like these are going to met between you. you don't know how far this is going to go. Because Gonzalo Lira was just providing context and information about this war that people should be aware of. People that are, siphoning their tax dollars, trillions and trillions of dollars of tax dollars, funding this war, should be aware about. This gentleman was providing information, and yet you have Ukrainian forces on state television claiming that they had to capture him. They had to capture him. That he was trying to flee, that he was trying to seek asylum. Oh, no, 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 no. An innocent man would be captured and detained, and we will take him down. Meanwhile, the United States, Canada, the UK, the European nations, any country really in the NATO embarkment is still trying to champion this as a defensive war and are still trying to champion themselves as, the great democracies of the world. They care so much about free speech. They care so much about free press, even though they're the most censored, brutalized, oppressed countries. And this is how they treat journalists. This is how they treat investigative reporters. When they say that they're for free press, when they say that they care about the sovereignty and the safety and stability of everyday journalists. They're not protecting Gonzalo Lira. They didn't protect Julian Assange. They're not protecting Edward Snowden. They're not protecting anybody. But sure, they will do smite attacks at Donald Trump and Pierre Poilievre because, God forbid, they told a corporate stooge to sit down. They told a corporate stooge to shut up for a second and listen to what has to be said. They'll say that is an attack on journalism, but this is allowed to be. So, to Gonzalo Lira's family, my condolences on behalf of everybody that is in supportive of accurate, independent journalism. People are heartbroken by this. I'm certainly heartbroken by this. And I'm also just, emotionally devastated on, if we continue down this path, what is it going to say for the rest of us? What tone is this going to send to the everyday reporters, the people at the gray zone, Aaron Mates and Max Blumenthal's, the Due Distance, the Jimmy Dores, the Kim Iversons, the Russell Brands, people like me, what is this going to say to us individuals that are just providing context, or just trying to provide information to a generalized populace to better understand the world? It's just devastating.